The Story of Final Fantasy XIV, Episode 1. Welcome to Eorzea. The Final Fantasy series is one filled with heroic adventures, unique characters, climactic confrontations, fantastic environments, and incredible music. Of all the games in the franchise, Final Fantasy XIV embodies all of these concepts perhaps better than any of the rest, or at least more extensively. The story of Final Fantasy XIV is lengthy, involving hundreds of characters and numerous factions encompassing hours upon hours of content. It is somewhat unique in the series by being a massively multiplayer game, but holds true to the franchise by containing a detailed and gripping narrative. Playing through this story on your own and absorbing all of its details could take upwards of 200 hours or more, but merely watching a short summary of its events would rob you of most of the joy of the character development and small details. This video series will attempt to create a middle ground between the two, a lengthy summary that will take far less time than actually playing yourself, while maintaining as much of the positive parts of the experience as possible. I will be making choices throughout this summary in order to present it as a complete narrative, but of course everyone's playthrough will be their own in some way. I will note that knowledge of any other game in the franchise is not at all required, as each Final Fantasy tells its own story. The story of Final Fantasy XIV takes place primarily in the land of Eorzea, on the world Hydaelyn. There are other continents and nations on Hydaelyn, of course, but we'll get to those as they come up. Eorzea is home to a myriad of intelligent species and unique flora and fauna, as well as a variety of climates and geographical features. The history of Eorzea, and by extension Hydaelyn, is recorded as a series of alternating periods of time, periods of abundance, known as astral eras, and periods of scarcity, known as umbral eras. As the story begins, Eorzea is currently in the 7th Umbral Era, which began only 5 years prior. We'll learn more about what brought this Umbral Era about as we go, but as a basic summary, the Garlean Empire, who make their home on the continent to the northeast of Eorzea, launched an invasion with conquest in mind. The armies of some of Eorzea's nations banded together to resist them, leading to a final confrontation on the plains of Cartano. The Garleans had initiated a process to draw one of Hydaelyn's moons, Dalamud, down onto the surface of Eorzea to purge it. Despite efforts to stop this, the moon continued to fall towards Cartano, until it suddenly burst open, revealing that it was in fact not a moon, but instead a giant prison for a powerful draconic entity named Bahamut. Bahamut proceeded to lay waste to both armies, as well as much of Eorzea's landscape, in an event known as the Calamity. In the aftermath, the Garlean Empire abandoned their conquest of Eorzea, while the various city-states of Eorzea began the process of rebuilding. Out of game, this event was the culmination of the original release of Final Fantasy XIV, a final ending before the eventual rebirth in Final Fantasy XIV 2.0, known as a Realm Reborn. The developers tied together the actual relaunch of the game into the storyline, which is rather clever. Eorzea was battered and bruised, but fully willing to continue on, knowing that the Garleans would eventually return. The 3 city-states that made up the Eorzean alliance to combat the Empire are Limsa-Lominsa, Gridania, and Ul'dah. Limsa-Lominsa is a coastal city-state whose economy is based on shipbuilding, fishing, and the shipping industry. Limsa-Lominsa is located on the Isle of Vilbrand, to the southwest of the larger continent of Aldenard. Pirates run rampant in the waters near Limsa-Lominsa, and the city-state's leader, Merlwyb Blofsvin, was once a pirate herself. Gridania is a woodland region based around forestry, agriculture, carpentry, and leatherworking, located in the north of Aldenard. Gridania is led by the Seed Seer Council, at the head of which is the prophet Khan Esena. Finally, Ul'dah is a bustling commercial hub located in a desert region in the south of Aldenard. Its wealth comes from the abundant mineral resources in the area, as well as the city's cloth crafting industry, with a great deal of coin passing through the city. The city is run by a small council of elites known as the Syndicate, the head of which is a young girl named Nanamo Ulnamo. It's here in Ul'dah that our story begins, where a woman named Eorzea rides towards the city on a carriage, along with a grizzled man and a pair of white-haired twins. While sleeping, she has a dream in which she's floating in space, and a female voice tells her to hear, feel, and think.
Hear, feel, think.
She then sees a black-robed man with a red mask appear from a vortex, and in a flash of light, she finds herself wearing an impressive set of armor as the man charges at her, and she wakes up. The carriage is accosted by the Brass Blades, a band of mercenaries in the employ of Ul'dah's syndicate that maintain peace and order in the region. The Brass Blades are known to be rather corrupt, and when they find some prohibited herbs in the carriage, they tell the grizzled man that he'll rot in a dungeon unless he can afford the fine. As they're conversing, however, a group of Amalja attack the caravan, a race of intelligent, hulking beastmen. Beastmen is a classification for a number of different species throughout Hydaelyn that differentiates them from the normal, civilized races. Races of beastmen possess their own cultures, technology, and civilizations, and the only thing that has really earned them the beastmen title is their religious beliefs, which we'll get to later. The Brass Blades rush to deal with the Amalja while the carriage speeds on towards Ul'dah. The grizzled man introduces himself to Explora and remarks that she must be a new adventurer. He tells her that she should report to the Adventurers Guild in Ul'dah to learn the ropes, and mentions that the syndicate in Ul'dah is split into two groups, the Royalists that support Nanamo's rule, and the Monitarists, who think of Nanamo as little more than a figurehead. The Monitarists don't have enough pull to completely take over Ul'dah, but it's clear that Nanamo herself, at only 21 years old, has very little power in the city. The carriage finally arrives at the city, and as wide-eyed Explora makes her way in to join up with the Adventurers Guild and begin her training as a gladiator, she gets pointed in the right direction by a friendly man at the gate. She heads over to the Quicksand, the principal tavern of Ul'dah and home to the Adventurers Guild, both of which are run by a woman named Momodi. Momodi is all too glad to welcome Explora into the guild, and fills her in on the local situation. The Amalja have been a thorn in Ul'dah's side for quite some time. The Garlean Empire is planning something in Eorzea, and people are still uneasy about the Calamity 5 years ago. No one can quite remember what exactly happened during the Calamity, even though they should, and they can't even remember the names and faces of the brave adventurers that fought on the fields of Cartano. Instead, they simply refer to those adventurers as Warriors of Light. Momodi then gives Explora 3 tasks to help her acclimate to the city. First, she visits the Etherite Plaza in order to attune to the Etherite Crystal there. Etherite crystals are essentially crystallized structures of magic affixed to machinery that allow for instantaneous teleportation across the world. No one is still quite sure how the crystals work, but one must first attune to any given crystal before being able to teleport back to it. Growing your personal network of Etherite access is an important part of being an adventurer. Secondly, Explora goes to visit the Gladiators Guild, where she hopes to train to become a master of sword and shield. She is accepted into the guild immediately, but progressing through the training will take some effort. Finally, she heads over to the city's market, where she meets with a man who tells her that she can purchase practically anything in a market like this, provided she has enough gil, the currency of Hydaelyn. Armed with some new knowledge, Explorer decides to test her sword and begin her gladiatorial training by heading outside the city to slay a few creatures. Even for one as fresh as her, they prove to be no match, and she returns to Momodi at the quicksand. Momodi directs her to speak with a man named Papashan in the dispatched yard outside of the city, who likely has some work for her. Meeting with Papashan, he tells her that there's a lot of work still to be done to continue rebuilding Ul'dah in the aftermath of the Calamity. His first task for her is simple: hand out some pretzels to a number of the sentries that are patrolling the area. The sentries are of course grateful for the food, but Papashan seems disappointed that they had nothing to report, as the sentries are actually searching for a young noblewoman that has run away from her family. Papashan stresses the importance of her safe return, and tells Explorer to search for her to the south, mentioning that her name is Lady Lilira. She heads off to the south, and sure enough, does find Lady Lilira praying underneath a massive tree known as the Sultan Tree. She finds her at the same time as a white-haired man, who's also concerned for her safety.
Forgive my selfish desire to assure your welfare.
I don't recall requesting an escort. Simply pretend we never met and continue on your way.
We both know I can do no such thing. It isn't safe for you here alone. It isn't safe for anyone. Not with this etheric disturbance. It's as though the dead are watching us.
As the group is preparing to return to Papashan, they are approached by a winged creature, and Explorer joins the man in combating it. It proves to be a more formidable foe than she's encountered so far, but in the end, the two defeat it, and Explorer finds a blue crystal on the ground afterwards. Picking it up, she experiences another dream, or vision, in which she's standing in the midst of a six-pointed symbol, and one of the points lights up. She hears the voice again telling her to hear, feel, and think, and it continues, referring to her as a crystal bearer.
Crystal bearer. I am Hydaelyn, all made one. A light there once was that shone throughout this realm, yet it hath since grown dim. And as it hath faltered, so hath darkness risen up in its stead, presaging an end to life. For the sake of all, I beseech thee, deliver us from this fate. The power to banish the darkness dwelleth in the crystals of light. Journey forth and lay claim to them.
She then wakes up on the ground, with the man and Lilira standing over her. The man says that the creature they fought was some sort of void scent, summoned by some nefarious individuals who are likely not bandits. Explorer tells him of her dream, which he seems to understand, but doesn't provide any further details. He tells her that they'll likely meet again, and he heads off as Lilira and Explorer return to Papashan. He's very pleased to see Lilira safe, saying that the Sultana would be beside herself with grief if anything had happened to her. The two seem to imply that something important has gone missing, and that she was out here to search for it, but she agrees to head back to the city. Explorer tells him of the white-haired man, who Papashan says is named Thancred, who is a harmless scholar that spends his time investigating oddities in the ether. Papashan has no further tasks for her, but another individual asks her to deliver a pumpkin to a roadside tavern known as the Coffer and Coffin. She does as she's asked, heading further away from the protection of the city, and delivers the item to the proprietor of the tavern. In turn, seeing that she's searching for more work, he directs her to the nearby Black Brush station to speak with a man named Warren, who is part of the Stone Torches, a group of mercenaries employed by a mining company to protect their interests. Warren warns that this could be messy work, and asks her to make sure her equipment is in order before he gives her a task. After buying a new set of armor, Warren informs her that shipments of ore pass through this station every day, coming and going from the dispatch yard to the south. These shipments pass through a tunnel in the mountains nearby, where an ore storehouse has caused a nest of coblins to appear. Coblins feast on ore, so Explora is sent in to clear out the nest, which she promptly does. Upon returning, a nearby Lalafell tells her that a vast untapped vein of ore has been discovered underneath some ruins, and a man named Whiston is hoping to swoop in and dig it out before any of the large companies. Whiston hopes to use the fortune from the vein to curry favor with the thaumaturges of Ul'dah, who draft the laws of the city. Unfortunately, she's too late, as Whiston had already hired a group of brass blades to do the work. Instead, she does an errand for him, and he explains that he hopes to change the laws of the city to better accommodate the large amounts of refugees of the Calamity that are currently forced to live outside of the city's gates. Their conversation is interrupted by some brass blades, who announce that they've found the ore vein. Whiston invites Explora to join him in this momentous discovery. Upon arrival at the ruins, though, she finds a beaten Whiston with the brass blades standing over him. The blades, firmly in the pocket of the Syndicate, have no interest in letting a newcomer take over such a vast wealth of ore. They notice Explora and prepare to kill the two of them, but they are interrupted by a black-robed man with a black mask, who begins to chant what seems to be a ritual of some sort. A mass of earth rises from the ground and forms into an animate shape, forcing Explora to leap in and defend Whiston as the blades run off. It's a harrowing encounter, but she emerges victorious. The robed man promptly disappears before she can question him, and Thancred arrives after the battle is done. Suddenly, Explora grips her head in pain and experiences a vision of Thancred in the city, walking and flirting with two women. He pauses as he overhears a couple of men discussing some recent caravan attacks by the Amalja, and assumes that the caravan was likely holding crystals, worried that they mean to summon something referred to as a primal. Later in the vision, Thancred remarks on the growing scarcity of grain, and that their problems are attributed to a weakening of the etheric flow due to the Calamity and to the primals. He continues his survey of the city, using an odd piece of facial technology that allows him to see the ether, and the vision ends. Thancred jokes that Explora seems to be everywhere there are etheric disturbances, and he may as well just follow her around, but he has business elsewhere. He speaks to someone using a device in his ear, telling them that their person of interest had already fled the scene by the time he arrived. Thancred warns Explora to tread lightly around Lord Lolorito, an important merchant in Ul'dah that sanctioned this trap. Explora follows Whiston back to the inn, where he thanks her for saving his life, and expresses his outrage at Lolorito for wanting him dead merely because he wanted to change the laws. Whiston plans to go into hiding, telling her that he'll keep her involvement here a secret, and suggests she go back to see Momodi at the quicksand. Explora swiftly returns to the city, where Momodi assures her that no one is aware that she was involved at the ruins, but Whiston is now a pariah. She hopes that this doesn't color Explora's view of Ul'dah, which is filled with mostly decent folks just trying to make a living. She suggests that Explora take a break and rest for the night in the inn, which she does. After a good night's rest, Explora goes back to Momodi, who directs her to the settlement of Horizon to the northwest of Ul'dah. There, she should speak with a merchant named Dadanin, who needs a hand with some sort of task, and might have some info on the royal family that interests her. Explora prepares to start hoofing it over there, but Momodi suggests renting a chocobo to take her straight there. Chocobos are a ubiquitous creature throughout the Final Fantasy series, bipedal birds that are often used as mounts or to pull carriages. Explora decides to pay the small fee to travel in style, and the chocobo swiftly carries her across western Thanalan to Horizon. She meets with Dodanin, who welcomes her, explaining that Horizon takes in goods from the port of Vesper Bay to the west and trades them across the region. It's a busy place, thus why he asked Momodi for help. Dodanin's current problem is that he sent a man to pick up some products at Copperbell Mines, and he hasn't returned. Explora finds the man fairly quickly, who explains that the mining company has shut down the mines due to an incident. The man was sent to grab some precious gemstones, but he was attacked by some Coblins on the way out, forcing him to leave the stones behind. The ever-dutiful Explora rushes in, clears out the Coblins, and retrieves the stones, or at least what's left of them. After returning, the man lets her know that swarms of sun midges have been harassing travelers in the area, and the brass blades are paying people to clear them out. It ain't much, but it's honest work, and Explora kills a number of swarms, which, considering she's wielding only a sword, is pretty impressive. The member of the brass blades she reports to, Fufalupa, is also impressed, and is glad to give her another task. He's been exchanging letters for some time with a Captain Leofric at the small camp of Lost Hope, but he hasn't heard back in a while, suggesting that something happened to his courier. Explora finds the courier on the way there, who's tending to her injured chocobo. The injury isn't that serious, but she suggests to Explora that she simply take the message the rest of the way to Lost Hope. For whatever reason, Explora senses a long future of performing menial tasks for people, but she complies and continues on to Lost Hope. Leofric is surprised at how much trouble Fufalupa went just to get a letter here, and reveals that he himself is no longer a captain of the Brass Blades, having been demoted and stuck here in this small camp. Leofric tells her to get out of here before she's seen associating with the people of Lost Hope, but Explora is persistent, so he gives her a task. Some bandits have been preying on the people of Lost Hope recently, robbing them of what little they have, and he'd like Explora to take out their leader in their camp on top of a nearby hill. This seems like quite the bold task for someone he just met, but it's better than delivering messages, so Explora rushes in. It doesn't take much for her to encounter the bandits' leader, a man calling himself Baron von Quiveron III, Esquire, and she swiftly puts him down. Leofric is pleased with her success, and tells her to return to Fufalupa and deliver to him an antique dagger that he says belongs with the brass blades of the Rose. Fufalupa is shocked to receive it, as only a captain of the Brass Blades can have it, and says that he assumes Leofric merely wants him to keep it safe until he comes to reclaim it. He also, of course, has another task for her, as thaumaturges from Ul'dah are surveying the nearby Footfalls region for ancient relics. The Brass Blades have been tasked with protecting them from the monsters in the area, but they are understaffed and spread thin, so Captain Baldwin only has a few men on the job. Fufalupa wants her to head over and help out, to which Explora agrees. The Footfalls is a flooded area containing a number of waterfalls, and she meets with a brass blade standing watch over some thaumaturges. The blade is not too pleased to see a random adventurer being sent to assist, and says that they have the situation well under control. Instead, they send Explora off on a minor errand to help prepare for some sort of feast for the thaumaturges. After talking with a fisherman at the docks nearby, she's approached by a woman who tells her that last night she overheard some bandits from the gang near Lost Hope talking about coming to the Footfalls to collect some precious gemstones. The same precious gemstones, in fact, that Explora rescued from the Coblins near the Copperbell Mines. Fufalupa overhears the conversation and exclaims that the Brass Blades cannot abide illicit dealings such as this. They'll have to act quickly to catch the criminals, and he goes immediately to inform Captain Baldwin. As he rushes off, the woman tells Explora that she has to hurry because Captain Baldwin himself is the one conspiring with the criminals. Explora runs back into the Footfalls to find Baldwin, catching up with Fufalupa as they find Baldwin meeting with one of the bandits. Fufalupa, naive as he is shocked to discover Baldwin is working with the bandits, and what's more, he's doing so on Lord Lolorito's authority. Sellswords doing underhanded deals with local criminal elements to make extra money isn't that shocking, but being directed to do so by one of the most powerful men in the city is pretty surprising to Fufalupa. The bandit he's meeting with calls himself Baron von Quiveron IV Esquire, and wants to kill Explora for killing his brother. Her and Fufalupa are then set upon by the group, and a fierce battle ensues, with the two of them emerging the victors. In the aftermath, Leofric shows up, and reveals that Lolorito has no interest in such a small-scale smuggling operation, as this is entirely Balduin's doing. He tells Balduin that Lolorito knows he's been using his name as part of this operation, and he'll likely be stripped of his rank. Leofric then says that Balduin is wrong about the brass blades being filled with greedy mercs that would sell their mothers into slavery if the price was right. There are men with honor in the blades, and that's why he gave Fufalupa that dagger. Afterwards, with Balduin stripped of rank and arrested, Fufalupa is made acting captain of the Horizon Garrison, a position he takes with a great deal of respect. They've been looking over Balduin's personal letters to root out the corruption in the Blades, discovering that he's been speaking with a member of the Sultan's sworn elite named Owen. The Sultan's sworn are the personal guards of the Sultana, so it's quite shocking that one of them would be dealing with someone like Balduin in any capacity. Fufalupa has Explora take the letter mentioning Owen to Momodi back in Ul'dah. Upon arrival, Momodi thanks her for everything she's done so far for the city, and takes the letter from her. Momodi says that Owen is as loyal a Sultan sworn as any she's known, so she doubts he's really in league with the criminals. She doesn't say what's in the letter, but she has a bad feeling about it. She reveals that the Sultana's crown has been stolen, which is the symbol of the royal dynasty. The Sultana has been losing control of the city as the Syndicate gains power, and if a word got out that her crown is missing, her rule might collapse entirely. Owen was the Sultan sworn assigned to guard the crown the night it was stolen. Momodi believes that Owen is not involved in the crown's disappearance, but that this letter contains a message for him from the criminals nonetheless. Explora delivers the letter to him, finding him still ashamed for losing the crown on his watch. The letter is a ransom note, and Owen feels that he must acquiesce to their demands due to the importance of recovering the crown. He doesn't want to go alone, and he doesn't want to risk scaring the thieves by bringing a whole group, so he asks Explora to accompany him. She's glad to help out, so they head out to meet the thieves at a shallow pond in central Thanalan known as the Unholy Air. The criminals take offense that Owen didn't come alone as asked, and suggest that Owen might be hiding a whole group of archers just out of sight. The lead criminal calls off the deal, but Owen tries to salvage it by tossing him the payment. Owen clearly didn't understand what he was giving them, as the criminal reveals it to be a magical relic known as the Traitor's Spurn, which will allow them to create an army of undying soldiers. Having received what they came for, the criminals move to attack Explora and Owen, but they are supported by a number of other Sultan sworn, led by Papa Shan, the station master. It's a brutal battle, and at one point the lead criminal manages to summon a void scent, identical to the one Explora and Thancred fought previously. The Sultan sworn win the battle, but they do not find the crown, as a number of criminals flee. Explora is left behind as they give chase, and she finds the black-robed man standing there. The man says that the source of her strength has become clear, but she won't survive this encounter. The man casts another incantation and summons a much larger void scent to attack her. Despite the fearsome creatures towering over her, Explora stands her ground and manages to slay it, partly thanks to Thancred's sudden arrival. The two then rush in to attack the robed man, eventually slaying him as well. The man mentions that the wisdom of the Paragons has been brought low by mortals, and Thancred reveals that he and the group he works for have long suspected the involvement of these masked individuals, known as Asians. Thancred again comments on how he continues to find Explora in the midst of trouble, and mentions that she's one of the gifted, but doesn't elaborate. He says that the death of this Ascian should give them at least some respite, but then makes his leave. As Explora stands there in the drizzling rain next to the corpse of the Ascian, she finds a purple crystal on the ground. As she goes to touch it, however, it evaporates. With the job done, she returns to Ul'dah to see if the Sultan Sworn recovered the crown. Speaking with Papashan, he reveals that he is a former Sultan Sworn, but put down his sword 15 years ago to become Station Master. Despite not being a Sultan Sworn anymore, he still guards the Sultana whenever she leaves the city, and he felt responsible for helping her retrieve the crown. Fortunately, they did get the crown back, and both the Sultan Sworn and the Sultana are grateful to Explora for her assistance.
Exalted Vessel of Northal, Guardian of Thanalan, 17th Ascendant to the Throne of Ul'dah, Her Royal Majesty, Nanamo Ul'Namo presides.
Long live Nanamo!
Long live
Glory
Nanamo!
to the
Glory
Sultana!
to the Sultana!
Forever may she
Forever
reign!
may she reign!
They regaled me with tales of a champion amongst champions, once whose tireless service to the crown merited the highest honor we might bestow. I, Nanamo Ul'Namo, Sultana of Ul'dah, confer upon you this gift. Raoban,
Your Grace.
see to it that our champion is my personal guest at the banquet.
As you command, Your Grace.
Explora is then introduced to Raoban Aldine, a former gladiator and current general of the Immortal Flames, Ul'dah's military force, as well as a loyal ally to Nanamo. Raoban also extends his gratitude to Explora for what she's done, and the group departs, hoping to see her at the banquet. Speaking with Owen, Explora learns just how rare of an honor it is to be invited to a banquet like this, especially as a fresh adventurer to Ul'dah. She'll have to follow some certain protocols that are expected at a banquet like this, and she should speak with Momodi to make sure she learns them. Momodi congratulates her on the invitation, and says that she usually only has to tell foreign dignitaries about what they should do for a banquet like this. All guests to a banquet must wear a pair of ceremonial earrings made for the occasion, and a person won't be let in without them. Fortunately, the set has already been commissioned and made by the Goldsmiths Guild, and Explora only has to go pick them up. Sure enough, at the Goldsmiths Guild, Explora is given a locked box containing the earrings, with the key provided for her by Momodi. These are all security measures to ensure that no one unexpected enters the banquet hall. Explora puts on the ceremonial earrings and makes her way to the banquet. Inside the hall, Nanamo makes a speech in which she again thanks Explora, calling her a hero to Ul'dah and a dear friend of the crown. During the feast, Explora is approached by Raoban, who tells her that while they gorge themselves here, children are starving in the streets. He doesn't blame Nanamo, of course, but rather the monitorists on the Syndicate, and Nanamo is distraught at not being able to do more to help. Raoban wants Explora's help in aiding the Royalists, but while they're speaking, the crystal that Explora had picked up earlier begins to glow. Raoban seems to recognize it, and asks if she's been troubled by strange dreams lately, or visions of a crystal. He says that some time ago, there were a number of other individuals that experienced similar visions in connection with a crystal, and they helped bring together the grand companies of Eorzea to combat the Garlean Empire. They fought alongside them on Cartano during the Calamity, the ones known as the Warriors of Light. Raoban thinks that Explora is one of these Warriors of Light, and tells her to protect that crystal at all costs, as it's a gift from Hydaelyn, the guiding spirit of this world. As if on cue, Explora experiences another vision, this time of the battle at Cartano. The three military leaders, Raoban, Merlvib, and Kana Senna, stand on a hill as the battle unfolds. An Ascian with a red mask watches them from a distance, and the battle is not going well. Bahamut ravages the landscape, and Kana Senna says that they must withdraw. Raoban doesn't want to abandon someone named Louis Sois, a sage that is currently trying to cast a ritual to re-cage Bahamut, but ultimately they decide to retreat. The leaders of the Grand Company stay behind to support Louis Sois, as the Ascian seems quite glad to see Bahamut unleashed. We know from history that Louis Sois failed to recontain Bahamut, and was only able to safely teleport the Warriors of Light away from the battle. The vision ends as Explorer wakes up in a bed in the inn, where Momodi tells her that she fainted right in the middle of the banquet. General Raoban left a message for her from when she woke up, telling her to meet him at the Hall of Flames. She finds Raoban, who has an important task for her. He gives her a couple of letters, and tells her that he's still haunted by what happened at Carteneau. He wishes to hold a memorial service on the 5th anniversary of the battle to honor the fallen, and wants Explorer to deliver these letters to the other leaders as his personal envoy. If Explorer really is connected with the Warriors of Light, he can think of none more worthy of the role. She gladly accepts, and Raoban tells her that she'll have to travel to Gridania and Limsa. It's a great distance by foot, so he grants her permission to use the airship routes that connect the 3 city-states. Airship travel is heavily restricted right now to avoid drawing the attention of the Garleans, but special circumstances can call for it, and Raoban is not alone in seeing Explorer's potential. He tells her to see the realm, and if her path is barred by man or beast, she should strike fast and true. Before heading off, Explorer returns to Momodi, who couldn't be more pleased to hear of her promotion to personal envoy. She reiterates the rarity of airship travel, and that most people will never see any of the other city-states. Momodi tells her to savor the experiences she's going to have, and the people she'll meet, but also to be careful, as Ul'dah is hardly the only place with troubles. She wishes her safe travels, and she'll see Explorer when she returns. All set to leave Ul'dah, Explorer makes her way to the airship landing, and proceeds to board a small airship. As the vessel takes off into the sky, and Explorer looks back over the expansive city of Ul'dah, a number of the people she has already met in her brief time in Eorzea see her off. It's revealed, of course, that the Lady Lilira that Explorer encountered was actually Nanamo herself in disguise, looking for the crown. Nanamo says that she could sense something unusual about Explorer when they first met, and hopes the other leaders feel the same way. Explorer leaves Ul'dah behind for now, but it's a wide world out there, and it seems her adventures are only beginning. Meanwhile, at a Garlean military base in Eorzea, a ship arrives bearing a group of individuals in distinctive armor. One of them recounts that 15 years ago, a fleet of Garlean airships sailed for the region of Mordona in Eorzea, led by a massive dreadnought called the Agrius. While the Eorzeans put up a meager defense, the Garleans were instead attacked by a host of dragons, led by a particularly great one called Midgard-Sormr. Midgard-Sormr died during the attack, but the dragon successfully stopped the invasion. Thus, the Garleans have failed twice at this point to conquer all of Eorzea, but they're not done yet. The man says that the Garlean Empire will save Eorzea from its chaos, and deliver its people from their ignorance. Some sort of creature is airlifted above the camp, as 2 soldiers are discussing the conquest of Eorzea in wake of the Empire's past failures. A man approaches them named Nero Tolskeva and asks where they were born. One of them says that they're from Alamigo, a region that was successfully conquered by the Garleans, and Nero proceeds to slay him under suspicion of being a traitor. Explorer's time in Eorzea has mostly been spent doing small tasks and favors, but there clearly seems to be many things stirring in the background, and she looks to be in the midst of it. Why exactly is she experiencing visions, and why is Hydaelyn seem to have chosen her to be a warrior of light? Who are these Ascians that seem so interested in causing chaos, and what exactly are the Garleans planning? For now, she'll focus on performing her duty as personal envoy, but her life is likely about to become a lot more interesting.